The martial arts field in Qingyun City was packed. It was the Yi family's annual grand competition, and the air was thick with the smell of sweat and anticipation. Every important person in the city had shown up, including Li Jianya, the head of the rival Li family. In the center of the arena, two figures blurred as they traded blows. The crowd roared. Yi Hao, the family's rising star, landed a powerful strike. People around me cheered, calling him a genius and the guaranteed winner. High on the platform, my father-in-law and head of the family, Yi Tianxiong, stroked his beard with a satisfied smile. But then his eyes shifted to the corner where I stood. His expression instantly turned to ice. He let out a cold snort and looked away. I stood there in my faded, washed-out clothes. I felt thin, out of place, and suffocated by the noise. My name is Lu Fan. To the Yi family and everyone in Qingyun City, I was nothing but a live-in son-in-law. A useless waste. 3 years ago, I was a genius in the capital city of Yunjing. But my family fell, a disaster struck, and I ended up here. I married the eldest daughter, Yi Qingxue. My reputation died the day I entered this house. To make matters worse, my dantian was shattered. I couldn't cultivate. I was just an ordinary man in a world of warriors. Hey, isn't that our famous Lu Fan? Someone whispered nearby. How does he have the nerve to show up? Should keep it down. He's the young Mrs. Husband. Husband? He's a parasite who's been eating our rice for 3 years. If it weren't for him, the young miss would have married the Li family's heir by now. Their words stung like needles. I was used to it, but it still hurt. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. My eyes drifted to a corner of the stands. There she was, Yi Qingxue. She wore a white dress, looking cold and beautiful, but her eyes were filled with worry for me. She moved her lips to speak, but a stern elder beside her stopped her with a sharp look. I looked away. I didn't want to see her struggle because of me. On the field, the match ended. Yi Hao sent his opponent flying with a single punch. The crowd went wild. Yi family truly produces talent, Li Jianya said from the guest seats, his smile not reaching his eyes. Then, his gaze sharpened. But I heard you have a legendary figure here. The genius from Yunjing. Why not let him show us a few moves today? The arena went silent. Every eye turned toward me in my corner. This wasn't an invitation, it was a public execution. Yi Tianxiong's face turned pale with rage. Before he could answer, a cocky voice rang out from behind Li Jianya. Father, why are you being so polite? Li Hao, the young master of the Li family, stepped forward. He was handsome but had a wicked glint in his eyes. He leaped onto the stage, snapping his fan open and pointing it straight at me. Lu Fan, you coward, he shouted, his chin high. Do you dare to fight me? The crowd gasped. Everyone knew Li Hao was a level 4 Qi practitioner. I was a cripple. This wasn't a challenge, it was a death sentence. Li Hao, don't go too far. Qingxue stood up, her face pale with anger. Too far, Li Hao laughed, looking at her with pure lust. Qingxue, you should have been mine. If it wasn't for this trash, you wouldn't be stuck with a loser. Today, I'm going to strip away his mask and show you what he really is. He turned back to me, his voice booming. Waste. If you're a man, get up here. Stop hiding behind a woman. My body trembled. Not from fear, but from a rage I had suppressed for 3 long years. The humiliation boiled over. I looked him in the eye and, to the shock of everyone there, I started walking toward the stage. Lu Fan, don't, Qingxue screamed. She tried to rush forward, but the elders held her back. Let him go, Yi Tianxiong said, closing his eyes. His voice was cold. He chose this. The Yi family has lost enough face already. I climbed onto the platform. You actually came up, Li Hao mocked. Fine. For Qingxue's sake, I'll give you a chance. Kneel, crawl through my legs and bark like a dog 3 times. Maybe then I'll let you go. The Li family disciples burst into laughter. You talk too much, I said quietly. Li Hao's smile vanished. You ungrateful piece of trash. I'll make you pay. He moved like a blurred arrow. His hand formed a claw, aiming straight for my throat. He wasn't playing. He was trying to kill me. Lu Fan, Qingxue screamed. My pupils contracted. I tried to dodge, but my body was too slow. 3 years of being a commoner had rusted my instincts. A dull thud echoed through the air. A massive force hit my chest. I flew backward, crashing into the dirt. I coughed, and blood splattered onto the ground. Pathetic, Li Hao said. He hadn't even used his hands. He had kicked me midair. He walked over and slammed his foot onto my chest, pinning me down. He looked down at me like I was an insect. Is this it? He ground his shoe into my face, his expression twisted with joy. The genius of Yinjing? You're just a clown. A piece of garbage like you doesn't deserve Qingxue. Agony flared through my ribs, but the shame was worse. My vision blurred. I saw the cold faces of the Yi family. I heard the laughter of the crowd. I felt the cold leather of his boot on my cheek. I looked past the crowd and saw her. Qingxue was shaking, biting her lip so hard it bled, trying not to cry. I'm sorry, Qingxue, I thought. I failed you again. The helplessness was a black hole in my heart. If only I had the power. If only I wasn't this weak. If I still had my original power, this wouldn't be happening. What's wrong? Not convinced. Li Hao noticed the defiance in my eyes. He pressed his foot down harder on my chest. A piece of trash like you dares to look at me like that? Enough, Li Hao. Don't go too far. Yi Tianxiong finally spoke up from the high platform. His voice was cold. After all, I was still the son-in-law of the Yi family. Even if I was just a dog to them, you still had to respect the owner. Too far. Li Hao let out a mocking laugh. He didn't back off. Instead, he got even more arrogant. Uncle Yi, you're looking at this the wrong way. I'm helping the Yi family clean house. It saves this loser from embarrassing your family every single day. He leaned down, his mouth inches from my ear. His voice was a deadly whisper that only I could hear. Kid, don't blame me. Blame yourself for marrying a woman you didn't deserve. Today is the day you die. He lifted his foot. His eyes were filled with a cold, murderous intent. Since you want to die so badly, I'll help you out. A powerful surge of spiritual energy gathered under his boot. He wasn't just trying to hurt me. He was going to crush my dantian and ruin me forever right in front of everyone. Stop! Qingxue screamed, her voice piercing the air. But it was too late. Li Hao's foot came down with the force of 1,000 soldiers, aiming straight for my core. If this hit, I'd be lucky to spend the rest of my life paralyzed in bed. I closed my eyes. I waited for the end. I felt a wave of pure desperation. Why did a genius have to fall this far? Why was my dignity worth nothing in the face of absolute power? If fate wants to push me this far, I won't just accept it, I thought. If I'm going to a dead end, I'll fight until the very last breath. A massive explosion of anger and defiance erupted inside me. Something snapped. Right as Li Hao's boot was about to touch my stomach, a faint golden light flickered deep within my ruined dantian. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Li Hao's twisted grin, Qingxue's tears, and the cold faces of the crowd. They were all part of a giant web trying to drag me into the abyss. No, I can't die. If I die, what happens to Qingxue? My survival instinct and my obsession with protecting her slammed into the 3 years of humiliation I had endured. It was like a volcano finally blowing its top. A golden light erupted from my core as if answering the roar of my soul. An ancient, mysterious dragon shape flickered for a split second. A massive countershock surged out of my body like an awakening beast. Gah! Li Hao let out a muffled groan. The force sent him flying backward. He stumbled 7 or 8 steps, his boots leaving deep cracks in the hard stone floor before he finally stopped. His face went pale. His leg was trembling, completely numb from the impact. The entire square went silent. People stared, their mouths hanging open. What just happened? Li Hao was a 4th-level Qi refinement expert. He had used his full strength to crush a trash commoner, and he was the one who got blown back? Am I seeing things? Someone whispered. Was that a golden light? It has to be an illusion, another replied. Young Master Li must have held back at the last second. The crowd erupted in disbelief, but no matter how they tried to explain it, the truth was right in front of them. On the platform, Yi Tianxiong stood up abruptly, his eyes fixed on me. Li Jianya's smile also froze. Howard, Li Jianya called out, his voice trembling slightly. I'm fine, Li Hao snapped, pushing away the disciples who tried to help him. His handsome face was now a sickly shade of blue and white. The physical pain was nothing compared to the shame. Being pushed back by a known loser in front of the entire city was worse than death. You little brat, you dared to trick me. Li Hao roared. He lunged forward, his spiritual energy flaring up again, ready to kill me regardless of the rules. But I couldn't fight anymore. As soon as that power had appeared, it vanished. It had torn through my fragile meridians like a wild dragon, leaving behind a pain that felt like 1,000 knives. My bones and muscles felt like they had been shredded and then mashed back together. My consciousness flickered like a candle in the wind. Before everything went black, I saw a white figure rushing toward me, crying my name. Asterisk, it's Qingxua. It's good to see you one last time. Asterisk. Lu Fan. Lu Fan, wake up. Qingxua broke through the guards and knelt by my side, pulling me into her arms. Her tears fell like pearls onto my face. She touched my chest, feeling my weak heartbeat and the burning heat of my skin. Her heart was breaking. What are you waiting for? Get out of my way, Li Hao shouted, his jealousy driving him mad. No one stops me today. I'm going to slaughter this trash. Enough. A booming voice echoed from the platform. Yi Tianxiong walked down, his face grim. Li Jianya, today is my family's competition, not your personal hunting ground. His voice was thick with suppressed rage. Your son seriously injured my son-in-law in public. The Li family owes me an explanation. He didn't care about me, but he cared about the Yi family's reputation. Li Hao's constant insults had finally crossed the line. Plus, he was suspicious of that strange golden light. Li Jianya stepped forward, giving a fake smile. Family head Yi, calm down. Youngsters get carried away during sparring. Besides, your son-in-law isn't dead, is he? It doesn't look like a big deal. While he spoke, he was already plotting. He knew something was wrong with me. He figured I had some hidden treasure, and he decided right then that I had to be eliminated as soon as possible. The chaos eventually settled down after the city governor's office sent people to mediate. The Li family left, but Li Hao's parting look was pure venom. The Yi family competition ended in a mess, and the crowd dispersed, already gossiping about the day's events. I woke up later in a simple bedroom. The air was thick with the smell of herbal medicine. A sharp, tearing pain shot through my body as I opened my eyes. The first thing I saw was Qingxua. She was leaning against the edge of the bed, her beautiful face pale and exhausted. It looked like she had cried herself to sleep. I watched her as she slept. Long eyelashes held tiny, crystalline tears, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. My heart ached with guilt. I struggled to sit up, but the slight movement was enough to wake her. Lu Fan, you're awake, Yi Qingxua cried out, her voice cracking with a mix of shock and joy. She rushed to support me, her hands trembling. How do you feel? Does it still hurt? The doctor, he said your meridians are shattered. He said your internal organs were severely damaged. She started sobbing again, unable to finish. I'm fine, I rasped. I reached out to wipe her tears, but my arm felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I couldn't even lift it. I gave a bitter smile and turned my focus inward to inspect my body. What I saw left me stunned. My dantian, which had been a silent, ruined wasteland for 3 years, had undergone a total transformation. In the center of that dried-up void, a golden speck of light the size of a grain of rice floated quietly. A faint, lifelike shadow of a dragon coiled around it. The dragon seemed alive, slowly breathing out a mysterious golden energy I had never seen before. It was actively repairing my broken meridians and damaged dantian. Deep in my mind, blurry fragments of memory began to surface. Ancient dragon soul. 9 dragon seals. Breaking to rebuild. First dragon mark awakened. Information flooded my brain. My head throbbed so hard I nearly blacked out again. I realized then that the tragedy 3 years ago, the family downfall, the enemies hunting me, the destruction of my dantian, wasn't just bad luck. That strike hadn't just broken me. It had accidentally shattered an ancient seal hidden deep within my bloodline. 9 ancient true dragon souls were sealed inside me. For 3 years, their power had been quietly nourishing my body. Today, under the life-or-death pressure from Li Hao, the first seal had finally broken. That overwhelming power from earlier had come directly from the first dragon soul. Heavens, you really gave me a massive cheat code, I thought, reeling with shock and ecstasy. 3 years of being called trash, 3 years of humiliation. It was all just the darkest hour before the dawn. But as the joy faded, I forced myself to calm down. I could feel that this power, while immense, was incredibly unstable. It was like a wild horse. I had only used a fraction of it subconsciously, and it had nearly made me explode. My meridians were currently a mess because of the backlash. To truly control this, I would have to start my cultivation from scratch and work 1,000 times harder than a normal person to temper my body. A rapid pounding on the door broke my thoughts. "Eldest miss, the third elder is here," a maid called out. Yi Qingshue's brows furrowed, a flash of disgust crossing her face, but she stood up to open the door. A thin, withered old man in a gray robe walked in. His eyes were cold and predatory. This was Yi Changqing, the third elder of the Yi family. He was a loyal follower of the family head, Yi Tianxiong, and he had always looked down on me. "Humph. So you're awake," Yi Changqing sneered, glancing at me on the bed with total contempt. "Third elder, is there something you need?" Yi Qingxue asked, stepping in front of the bed to shield me. Her tone was sharp. Yi Changqing ignored her and looked straight at me. "Boy, don't think that just because you got lucky on the stage today, your status as trash has changed. I'm here on behalf of the family head to inform you of something." He paused, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. After the Li family left today, they immediately sent a challenge. They want a rematch between you and Li Hao during the Qingyun City Grand Competition in 1 month. He leaned in closer. "If you lose, the Yi family will return double the assets we took from the Li family. And Qingxue, she will be married off to Li Hao immediately." "What?" Yi Qingxue looked like she'd been struck by lightning. The color drained from her face. "How could you agree to such a ridiculous demand? I won't do it." "It's not up to you," Yi Changqing barked. "The family head has already agreed. This is the family's decision." "What?" Yi Qingshue's voice trembled. "Why would he do this?" Yi Changqing laughed coldly. "Because your useless husband made the Yi family lose face today. You think he looked impressive blocking Li Hao's strike? To everyone else, he's just a coward who used some shady, unknown trick to survive. The family head said he either wins back our honor in front of the whole city in a month, or we use your marriage to make up for the family's losses." Every word was a dagger. Yi Qingxue bit her lip so hard it bled, her body swaying. She knew this wasn't about losses. The family had been looking for an excuse to dump me and align themselves with the Li family for a long time. This bet was just a formal excuse because they all knew I had zero chance of winning. Anyway, the message is delivered. "Lu Fan, you're on your own." Yi Changqing gave me one last look, as if he were staring at a dead man, and turned to leave. "Wait." My voice was raspy but strangely calm. Yi Changqing stopped and looked back. With Qingshue's help, I struggled to sit up against the headboard. I was pale and weak, but my eyes were burning like cold stars in the dark. I looked at him and asked, word for word, "What if I win?" Yi Changqing blinked, then burst into the loudest laugh I'd ever heard. "You? Win? You're a cripple whose meridians are literally in pieces. What are you going to win with? Your mouth." I didn't react to the mockery. I just kept my eyes on him and repeated, "I asked you, what if I win?" There was something in my gaze that he couldn't ignore. His laughter died down. He narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "If you can actually win, the family head said your status will be equal to a direct bloodline heir. All the family's cultivation resources will be open to you without condition." He said it like it was a joke, a blank check he knew he'd never have to cash. "Fine," I nodded. "I accept the bet. Now get out." "What did you say?" Yi Changqing roared. He was a high-ranking elder, and he'd just been told to get out by a useless son-in-law. But when he looked into my deep, dark eyes, a sudden chill climbed up his spine. He found himself unable to speak. He huffed, flicked his sleeves, and stormed out. The door slammed shut. The room went silent. "Lu Fan, why? Why would you agree to that?" She collapsed into my arms, her tears soaking my shirt. "They just want you dead. Let's go. Let's just leave the Yi family and go somewhere where nobody knows us, okay?" Feeling her trembling body in my arms, I felt a rush of warmth and pity. For 3 years, no matter how much the world mocked and bullied me, this woman had stayed by my side. She was the only one who protected my pathetic dignity. Before, I didn't have the power to protect her. But now, things were different. I gently patted her back and helped her up. I looked into her red, swollen eyes and gave her a smile filled with more confidence than I had ever shown in my life. I reached out, tenderly wiping away her tears. My voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that couldn't be questioned. Qingxue, trust me this once. Within 1 month, I will make him pay in blood. The words felt heavy in the air, vibrating with a power that both comforted and terrified Yi Qingxue. She looked at me, her face pale, but my eyes were burning with a light she had never seen before. She believed me. She had believed in me from the moment I showed up at her door 3 years ago, a former genius covered in blood and broken by the world. Even when I became the laughingstock of the city, her trust never wavered. But 1 month? My opponent was Li Hao, a cultivator at the 4th level of qi refining. And me? The doctor had just said my meridians were shattered. Surviving it all was a miracle. This wasn't a duel, it was a funeral. Lu Fan, we should just... I cut her off by gently taking her hand. My palm was cold and my body was weak, but I held her with a grip like iron. Qingxue, I couldn't protect you before. I was useless, I said, my voice softening as I looked into her eyes. But starting today, that changes. Give me a little time, and give yourself a little faith. My smile was faint, but it was enough to settle her heart. She wanted to say 1,000 things, but in the end, she just gave me a firm, silent nod. Over the next few days, the news of my 1-month bet with Li Hao spread through Qingyun City like a wildfire. It was the talk of every tea house and tavern. People laughed at the sheer absurdity of it. The trash son-in-law of the Yi family was actually going to fight the young master of the Li family, and he had put his own wife and the family business on the line. He's lost his mind, they whispered. He must have been beaten stupid. He thinks blocking one hit makes him invincible. Inside the Yi family estate, the atmosphere was suffocating. The servants looked at me with a mix of pity and disgust, like I was a death row inmate waiting for the axe. The family elders and cousins didn't even hide their excitement. They were just sitting back, waiting for the show to begin. I ignored all of it. During the day, I played the part of the recovering patient, drinking the bitter medicine Qingxue brought me. But every night, when the house went still, I sent everyone away and began my secret cultivation. I sat cross-legged on the bed and closed my eyes, sinking my consciousness into my dantian. Above the ruins of my inner power, a golden speck of light the size of a grain of rice floated in the center. It circled a faint dragon shadow that looked slightly more solid than before, radiating an ancient, overbearing pressure. Let's try this, I thought. I reached out with my mind, trying to nudge a single strand of that golden dragon soul power. Boom. It was like waking a sleeping volcano. A violent, uncontrollable flood of energy surged out, crashing through my fragile meridians. I let out a muffled groan as beads of sweat poured down my face. The pain was indescribable. If my meridians were narrow country lanes, this power was a heavy-duty truck driving at full speed, crushing everything in its path. Every inch of my flesh felt like it was being torn and burned simultaneously. My body shook. My face went white. I grit my teeth so hard I thought they would shatter. It's too much, I gasped. This dragon soul power was stubborn. It refused to be tamed. Within seconds, I was soaked through, as if I'd been pulled from a river. I couldn't hold it. I spat out a mouthful of dark blood, and the injuries that had just started to heal tore wide open again. The dragon's soul power retreated like a ebbing tide, settling back into my dantian as a quiet shadow. I collapsed onto the bed, gasping for air, unable to lift a finger. How am I supposed to use this? I managed a bitter laugh. I was sitting on a mountain of treasure, but couldn't even carry out a single stone. It was a special kind of despair. For 3 nights, it was the same. Every attempt ended in agonizing failure. I wasn't getting stronger. I was just hurting myself more. I started to wonder if this golden finger was just a manual on how to kill myself in the most painful way possible. On the 4th night, as the familiar pain ripped through me, I forced my eyes open just to distract myself. My gaze landed on an empty bowl on the nightstand. The remains of the medicine Qingxue had brewed for me. She didn't trust the servants. She watched the fire herself every single time. As my consciousness wavered from the pain, something strange happened. The dregs in that bowl seemed to come alive. I could see faint, invisible wisps of energy rising from the medicine, fading into the air. Some were warm, some were sharp, others were calm. It was the final essence of the herbs, released after they had been boiled away. What is that? I whispered. I turned my head toward a pot of orchids on the windowsill. Suddenly, a whole new world opened up. The orchid wasn't just leaves and buds anymore. I could see a vibrant, pale green energy flowing through it like blood. Wherever the energy touched, the leaves grew greener and the buds more full. This was Qi, the life essence of all living things. The dragon soul. It lets me sense the spirit of plants. My heart hammered against my ribs. The joy was so sudden it actually numbed the pain. I had been doing it all wrong. The dragon soul power wasn't just a blunt weapon for fighting. It was a cheat code that allowed me to see the very essence of the world. So that's how you work, I muttered, excitement bubbling up. I forced myself to calm down and think. My meridians were a mess, like a road made of cardboard. I couldn't drive a race car on them yet, so increasing my cultivation enough to beat Li Hao in 30 days was a long shot. If I couldn't win with brute force, I had to be smart. In war, you don't just attack the city, you attack the heart. To ruin Li Hao, I had to pull the rug out from under the Li family. They built their fortune on the medicinal herb trade. They were the biggest suppliers in the city, and nearly 40% of the Yi family's herbs came from them. If something went wrong with their herbs, my eyes brightened. The next morning, when Qingxue walked in with my medicine, she stopped in her tracks. My color was better, and my eyes were sharp with a new kind of fire. Qingxue, I need a favor, I said, pulling her close and lowering my voice. I need to see the account books for our dealings with the Li family. All of them. I needed proof. I asked Qingxue if she could get me samples of the herbs the Li family had delivered. She looked confused, but when she saw the look in my eyes, she didn't ask a single question. She just told me to wait. As the eldest daughter of the family, getting her hands on some supplies wasn't difficult. Half an hour later, she slipped back into my room carrying a stack of thick ledgers and several small cloth bags. I told her she would find out what they were for soon enough. I picked up a piece of red sheep flower from our own family stock first. I channeled a tiny stream of dragon soul energy into my eyes, using it as a lens rather than a weapon. The world shifted. Inside that dried flower, I saw a pulse of pure, burning energy. It looked like a tiny sun trapped in the petals. It was full of life. Then I picked up the sample the Li family had sent. My face went cold. On the outside, it looked identical. But through my vision, the energy inside was completely different. It felt gray and decaying. It was a cold, stagnant aura that felt like death. Kuga grass. The name flashed in my mind instantly. It was a toxic weed that mimicked the appearance of red sheep flower perfectly, but its effects were the polar opposite. A small dose would clog a warrior's meridians. Long-term use would slowly rot their foundation until their cultivation regressed entirely. The Li family was incredibly vicious. They weren't just trading with us. They were systematically crippling the Yi family's future. It explained why so few geniuses had emerged from our younger generation lately. Qingxue saw my expression and asked what was wrong. When I explained the discovery, she started shaking. Her face went pale with rage. She grabbed my hand and told me we had to tell her father immediately. We headed straight for the main hall. Yi Tianxiong was sitting in the high seat, surrounded by the family elders. The atmosphere was heavy. Third elder Yi Chongqing was there, and as soon as he saw me, he curled his lip in a sneer. He asked Qingxue why she was bringing a waste like me into a private meeting. Qingxue didn't back down. She presented the two herbs and told them the Li family was poisoning us with kuga grass. The room went silent. Yi Tianxiong's expression darkened as he examined the plants. He handed them to Elder Wang, the man in charge of the family's alchemy. The old man looked them over for several minutes before shaking his head. He said he couldn't see or smell any difference at all. Yi Tianxiong turned his gaze toward me. His voice was like ice when he asked if I was the one who came up with this. I looked him right in the eye and told him I was. Yi Chongqing let out a sharp, mocking laugh. He called me a fool. He pointed out that I was a man with a broken dantian who hadn't practiced in 3 years. He asked how a failure like me could see something that a professional pill master couldn't. He accused me of being terrified of my upcoming duel and trying to start a war between the families just so I could hide. Another elder chimed in, agreeing that I was just looking for an excuse to run away. Qingxue was near tears, begging them to believe me. But Yi Tianxiong's eyes only grew colder. He told me the Yi family had supported me for 3 years for nothing, and now I was trying to sow discord. He said he had been too kind to me. Looking at their sneering, arrogant faces, I felt a chill in my soul. I finally understood the reality of this world. Without strength, even the truth sounds like a lie. Explaining was useless. Arguing was a waste of breath. I took a deep breath and bowed slightly to Yi Tianxiong. I told him that since they didn't believe me, I had nothing left to say. I stood tall, the anger leaving my eyes, replaced by a calm, sharp clarity. I asked for one night. I promised that by this time tomorrow, I would bring back ironclad proof that no one could deny. Before they could even respond, I turned around and walked out of the hall. Yi Chongqing was screaming behind me about how disrespectful I was, but I didn't care. I walked out into the cool night air. The sun was setting, and in the distance, I could see the lights of the Li family estate glowing bright. If words couldn't convince them, I would use action. Tonight, I was going to show this city that Lu Fan was back. I headed for the Li family herb warehouse. The night was as dark as spilled ink. By the time I reached my small courtyard, Qing Xue was waiting for me, her eyes red with worry. I gave her a small, forced smile and told her everything was fine. I told her I just needed to be alone to think. She knew I was hiding something, but she chose to trust me. She nodded softly and told me not to push myself since my injuries weren't fully healed. Once she was gone, my smile vanished. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for those old men to change their minds. I dug through the bottom of my bed and found an old set of black night clothes I had kept from 3 years ago. I changed quickly, blending into the shadows. I spent the last 3 years wandering every inch of Qingyun City as a beggar and a failure. I knew every hole in every wall and every alleyway better than anyone. Those memories of hiding from bullies were finally going to be useful. I moved through the darkness like a ghost, reaching the back wall of the Li mansion. The security was tight. Guards stood every few yards along the high walls, their blades gleaming in the torchlight. Patrols crossed paths every few minutes, leaving almost no gaps. For a normal martial artist, getting in would be impossible. But I wasn't normal. I closed my eyes and let the dragon's soul energy flow into my pupils. The world transformed. The guards were no longer men. They were glowing outlines of energy, and I could see exactly where their vision failed. The guards weren't just men anymore. In my vision, they were glowing red outlines of energy. I watched their every breath and the steady rhythm of their heartbeats. I could see the flow of qi moving through their bodies like rivers of light. As 2 patrol teams crossed paths near the northeast corner, I spotted it. There was a blind spot. It lasted for exactly 3 breaths. Now, I crouched low, muscles coiled like a hunting leopard. The moment the guards turned their backs, I exploded forward. I stayed glued to the shadows of the wall, moving with a series of quick, silent leaps. I scaled the high stone barrier like a gecko. A guard at the top felt a sudden breeze and glanced back, but I was already gone. He shrugged it off as a trick of the wind. I drifted down into the Li family courtyard, silent as a falling leaf. The herb warehouse was to the west. I could sense it. It was the place where the security was tightest and the energies were most chaotic. I pushed the dragon's soul power again, suppressing my own aura until I felt invisible. I became one with the grass and the trees. I slipped past 3 more patrols and 2 hidden sentries. I even walked within 3 feet of a drowsy guard, and he didn't even blink. Soon, a heavily fortified building stood before me. 8 guards flanked the entrance. Their breathing was deep and steady, their temples bulging. These were experts of the qi refining realm. Even worse, I felt a massive, gray aura lurking inside. That was a master, likely at the late stages of the qi refining realm. This was definitely the place. I didn't try to force my way in. Instead, I circled to the back where a pile of junk was rotting against the wall. Using my energy vision, I found a small, forgotten crawl space. I squeezed my body through and was immediately hit by the pungent, bitter smell of medicinal herbs. I was in. The warehouse had 3 floors. The first held common herbs, the second contained rarities, and the third was for the Li family's secret pills. I headed straight for the second floor, moving like a ghost. Rows of wooden shelves stretched into the dark, filled with jade boxes. To anyone else, this was a treasure trove of healing. To me, it was a crime scene. Most of the herbs glowed with pure, vibrant life energy. But then, I saw the anomalies. I reached a shelf labeled Red Sheep Flower and picked up a stalk. In my vision, the energy inside wasn't fiery and warm. It was cold, decaying, and filled with the aura of death. Cougar grass. I knew it. I kept searching and realized it wasn't just the red sheep flower. At least 7 or 8 other expensive herbs had been swapped or tampered with. The Leaf family were geniuses at deception. If this were my past life, I'd give them an award for their sheer lack of a conscience. I reached for a few samples to take as evidence, but then I heard voices from downstairs. 2 warehouse keepers were whispering. "I don't get it," one said. "Why is the master working with those cutthroats from Blackwind Fortress? It's like inviting a tiger into the house." "You don't know anything," the other hissed. "It's a pincer move." On the day of the grand competition, the bandits attack from outside while we strike from within. By the time the city lord reacts, the whole city will belong to the Lee family. The Yi family will be the first to be wiped out. I guess. I just hope those bandits are reliable. Don't worry. The young master handled the deal personally. He already paid half the deposit. See that signal flare in the corner? Once he sets that off from the arena, the slaughter begins. My heart hammered against my ribs. Blackwind Fortress? An internal coup? The fragments I'd heard earlier finally clicked into a terrifying picture. This wasn't just a petty rivalry anymore. They were planning to burn the whole city down. I looked where they were pointing. In the corner sat a specialized signal cylinder, much thicker than a normal firework. I had to stop them. I grabbed the fake herb samples and tucked them into my robe, then began creeping toward the signal flare. I wanted to steal it without making a sound. But luck wasn't on my side. Just as my fingers brushed the cylinder, a rat darted out from a pile of herbs. It shrieked and collided with an empty glass bottle. Smash! The sound of shattering glass was like a thunderclap in the silence. "Who's there?" the keepers shouted. At that exact moment, the powerful gray aura I had sensed earlier exploded. "Intruder! Lock down the warehouse!" A roar echoed through the entire Lee estate. Damn it! I was exposed. I abandoned the signal flare and bolted for the exit. "You think you can run?" a cold voice hissed. A black shadow blurred up the stairs, blocking my path. It was an old man with bone-white hair and eyes like a snake. This was Li Tsong, the warehouse guardian. He was at the 8th level of the Qi refining realm. Without a word, he lunged. His withered hand hooked into a claw, whistling through the air toward my skull. My skin crawled. I knew if that hit me, my head would pop like a rotten melon. I didn't have time to think. I took the dragon soul energy I had just barely stabilized and unleashed it all at once. Boom. A golden current of heat flooded my broken meridians like a tidal wave. The pain was agonizing, but it gave me a burst of speed. I arched my back at an impossible angle, feeling the wind of his claws graze my chest. Li Tsong's eyes widened. He didn't expect a weakling like me to dodge his strike. "You have some tricks," he growled, "but it won't be enough." He turned into a whirlwind of strikes, his claw shadows sealing off every path of escape. I was desperate, dancing on the edge of a blade. Every time I tapped into the dragon's soul, more cracks appeared in my meridians. I was a fraction of a second too slow. A strike caught me across the back, throwing me forward. I slammed into the floor, coughing up a mouthful of blood. The gap in our power was too wide. If I stayed and fought, I'd be dead in 10 moves. I had to get out. A flash of madness crossed my mind. Instead of retreating, I used the momentum of my fall to scramble up and charge straight at him. "Die!" Li Tsong laughed, thinking I was on a suicide mission. He raised his hand for the killing blow, but I wasn't aiming for him. At the last second, I dropped low, sliding past his legs. I put every ounce of my remaining strength into my fist and punched the wooden wall behind him. The warehouse wall groaned and shattered under the golden impact of the dragon's soul. I didn't look back. I threw myself through the hole and plunged into the dark night. The wall shattered into a million pieces. I didn't hesitate for a second. I leaped through the hole and sprinted into the night. Behind me, Li Tsong let out a roar of pure rage. He called me a little beast and swore he'd kill me, charging after me with everything he had. The entire Li family estate was wide awake now. Torches flickered to life in every corner. Shouts and the clanging of weapons echoed through the air. I looked back and saw Li Tsong closing the distance, with guards swarming in from every direction. I was trapped. I grit my teeth. I had to gamble everything. Risking the total collapse of my meridians, I squeezed the very last drop of dragon soul power from my dantian. My body turned into a blurred black streak. I tore through the complex courtyards, leaping over rooftops and weaving through rock gardens. Stop him. Don't let him escape, Li Tsong screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. But I was moving too fast. My movements were erratic and strange. The ordinary guards couldn't even touch the hem of my clothes as I flickered past them. Finally, I saw the outer wall. I was almost out. Don't even think about it, Li Tsong yelled. He was still 30 feet away, but he thrust his hand forward. A sharp, lethal gust of wind shot from his fingertip, aiming straight for the center of my back. There was no way to dodge it. I felt the killing intent locking onto me. In that split second, I made a choice. I curled my body forward to protect the herbs in my chest and took the full force of the strike with my back. The energy pierced through my skin like a hot iron. A spray of blood erupted as a hole was punched through my shoulder. The pain was blinding. I nearly lost consciousness right then and there, but I used the momentum of the impact to propel myself forward. I flew over the high wall like a cannonball and slammed hard onto the stone street outside. I didn't stop to feel the agony. I scrambled to my feet and dove into a pitch-black alley, vanishing into the darkness. Behind the walls, I could hear Li Tsong's muffled roars, ordering his men to dig up 3 feet of earth just to find me. I ran until the sounds of pursuit faded into nothing. Eventually, my legs gave out. I collapsed against a cold stone wall in a dark corner. I was covered in blood. My face was deathly pale. The wound in my back was still leaking, and my meridians were a shredded mess, worse than when I had been crippled the first time. But I looked down at my chest. The kuga grass was still there, stained with my blood but perfectly intact. I had won. I had traded half my life for the evidence that would destroy the Li family. I forced myself to stand. I dragged my body toward the Yi family estate, leaving a trail of bloody footprints behind me. By the time I reached my familiar courtyard, my vision was blurring into gray. The door creaked open. Yi Qingxue walked out, her eyes red from a sleepless night. When she saw the bloody figure standing at her gate, she froze. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. I looked at her and managed a weak, trembling smile. I reached into my shirt and handed her the bloody herbs. Qingxue, the evidence. I got it. Before I could say another word, the world tilted. Darkness swallowed me whole, and I collapsed into the dirt. Lu Fan. Her scream shattered the silence of the dawn. She knelt beside me, her hands shaking, too terrified to even touch my mangled body. Her world was falling apart. She realized I had actually gone. I had actually risked my life for that proof. She screamed for a doctor, her voice raw with despair. The entire Yi family was thrown into chaos. When the best doctor in the house arrived, he took one look at me and turned white. He checked my pulse and sighed, shaking his head. Prepare for the funeral, the old doctor said. His foundation was already damaged. Now his meridians are inverted, his organs are displaced, and that wound in his back. I'm sorry. Even a god couldn't save him now. No, you're lying, Qingxue screamed, grabbing the doctor by his collar. Her eyes were bloodshot. My husband won't die? If you can't fix him, I'll find someone who can. I'll bring every doctor in the city. Yi Tianxiong and the elders arrived shortly after. Even their cold hearts were moved by the sight of me. Their eyes lingered on the blood-soaked herbs Qingxue was clutching. The weight of what I had done finally started to sink in. While I lay dying, Qingyun City was in an uproar. The Li family was furious. They locked down the city, searching house to house, claiming they had lost a priceless treasure. They had no idea that the thief they were looking for was currently being given up for dead in the Yi family infirmary. I was drifting in a cold, endless ocean. My body felt like it had been torn into 1,000 pieces. Just as the darkness was about to pull me under, I felt a warm current flowing into me. It was like water in a desert. It was the medicine Qingxue was feeding me. I snapped awake internally. I couldn't die. Not yet. I pushed my consciousness down into my ruined dantian. The dragon's soul shadow was faint, almost transparent, but it was still there. It was working. It took the medicinal energy Qingxue was giving me and turned it into golden threads of power, slowly weaving my broken meridians back together. It was like a 24/7 life support system inside my own gut. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't have the strength. As long as the medicine kept coming and the dragon soul kept flickering, I would survive. I don't know how much time passed. When I finally opened my eyes, the sun was high in the sky. Qingxue was slumped by my bedside, her face haggard, tear tracks staining her cheeks. My heart ached. I twitched my finger, just a tiny bit. That small movement woke her instantly. She looked up, and when she saw my eyes open, she burst into tears again. She grabbed my hand like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to the world. Qingxue, I'm okay, I whispered. My voice was thin, but I was breathing. The evidence. It's here, she said, quickly pulling a silk-wrapped bundle from under my pillow. I've kept it safe. I looked down at the stalks of kugu grass, now stained dark crimson with my own blood. My vision sharpened. The pain was still there, but it was secondary to the fire burning in my gut. Qingxue, help me up, I whispered. Her eyes went wide with panic. What are you doing? You're hurt so badly, you can't possibly move. I shook my head slowly. Time was a luxury I didn't have. The Li family has gone mad. If we don't act now, we won't get another chance. Go, gather all the elders. Tell them I have urgent business in the meeting hall. Half an hour later, I was leaning heavily on Qingxue as we entered the Yi family council chamber. The air was thick enough to choke on. Yi Tianxiong and the rest of the elders sat in their high-backed chairs, their faces grim and impatient. They looked at me, pale as a ghost, barely standing, with nothing but cold scrutiny. Lu Fan, you should be lying in bed waiting to die. Third elder Yi Chongqing spat, his voice dripping with venom. Why have you dragged us all here? Are you trying to pull the Yi family down with you before you kick the bucket? The room filled with the sound of mocking laughter. I didn't say a word. I didn't have the energy to argue. I simply walked to the center of the hall and placed the blood-stained silk bundle on the table. This is what I took from the Li family warehouse, I said calmly. Yi Chongqing let out a derisive snort. Oh, and what treasure did you risk your pathetic life to steal? Are you hoping to trade it for your skin? I ignored him and locked eyes with my father-in-law, Yi Tianxiong. Father, words are useless now. Today, I only ask for one thing to prove the truth. What is it? Yi Tianxiong asked, his brow furrowed. An alchemy furnace. The room erupted. People were clutching their sides, laughing at the absurdity of it. A furnace? You. Yi Chongqing cackled. A failure like you wants to play at being an alchemist? Are you worried you won't die fast enough? Do you want to blow yourself up right here? I waited for the noise to die down. My voice remained steady. I don't know how to refine pills, but I do know this. True red sheep flower is fierce like fire. Refine it over a gentle flame, and you get its essence. But this kuga grass? It's cold and een in nature. It looks the same, but it's rotten to the core. If you treat them both with the same technique, the real flower becomes medicine. The fake will only explode. Silence fell. They looked at me like I had lost my mind. Even Elder Wang, the family's head alchemist, stepped forward with a deep scowl. Patriarch, this is nonsense, Elder Wang said. I have refined pills for decades, and I have never heard of such a ridiculous method. Yi Chongqing smirked. Hear that, Lu Fan? Even Elder Wang says you're full of it. I looked at Yi Chongqing, a faint, provocative smile touching my lips. Since it's nonsense, why doesn't the third elder make a bet with me? If I'm wrong, take my life right now. But if I'm right, I paused, looking at every elder in the room. From now on, when I speak, the Yi family listens. The audacity of it stunned them. Fine. Yi Tianxiong slammed his hand on the table and stood up. His eyes were complicated, angry, yet searching for a spark of hope. Elder Wang, bring the furnace. We will verify this here and now. A bronze furnace was brought to the center of the hall. Everyone held their breath. Start with our own red sheep flower, Yi Tianxiong ordered. Elder Wang tossed a genuine stalk into the furnace. He circulated his spiritual power, fueling a gentle flame. A few minutes later, the lid opened. A sweet fragrance filled the air. A single red pill lay at the bottom. See? That is the proper way, Yi Chongqing sneered. I didn't blink. I gestured for Qingxue to hand over the blood-stained kuga grass. Elder Wang took it with a look of pure disgust and tossed it into the furnace. He used the exact same technique, the exact same heat. The moment the grass hit the bottom, the flames didn't settle. They jumped. The furnace began to vibrate violently. A low, muffled roar echoed from inside, like a beast waking up. Elder Wang's face turned white. He tried to pull his power back, but the energy inside had already spiraled out of control. "Get back!" he screamed. A deafening explosion rocked the entire mansion. The expensive bronze furnace shattered into 1,000 jagged shards. A wave of heat and black smoke surged through the hall, knocking several elders off their feet. When the smoke finally cleared, everyone was frozen. A massive crater sat in the middle of the floor, surrounded by smoking debris. Yi Chongqing sat there, his face covered in soot, looking utterly stupid. Only I remained standing straight. I had pulled Qingxue behind me, shielding her from the blast. "Father," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a hammer. "Do you believe me now?" The evidence was undeniable. The Li family wasn't just trying to cheat us, they were trying to destroy our foundation. The Li family. Yi Tianxiong's voice was a low growl, his teeth grinding together. They actually dared. "Men, cut off all business with the Li family immediately. Seize every herb we bought from them, and send samples of this poison to every family in the city that deals with them. I want to see how they survive this." The storm had begun. But as the adrenaline faded, my body gave out. I swayed, coughing up a mouthful of blood. I had used every ounce of strength to stay upright. "Lu Fan." Qingxue caught me as I collapsed. This time, Yi Tianxiong didn't watch from a distance. He rushed forward and pressed a glowing green pill into my mouth. "This is a rejuvenation pill. It will keep you alive." He looked at me with a new kind of respect. "From today on, you move into the listening snow pavilion. Use any medicine you need. If you want something, just ask." That night, I lay in a soft bed in the best courtyard of the estate. The dragon soul was busy converting the pill's energy, stitching my body back together. But I wasn't happy. I had won this round, but I could feel my meridians screaming. The dragon soul's power was a double-edged sword. It was too strong for my broken body to handle. If I didn't find a way to stabilize my soul and temper my veins, I wouldn't last until my duel with Li Hao. I would simply explode from the inside out. I closed my eyes and searched through the fractured memories of the dragon soul. Finally, I found it. Spirit soul grass. It grows only in places of extreme Yin. I needed it to survive. And there was only one place to find it, the Monster Mountain Range. I snapped my eyes open, a flash of golden light flickering in my pupils. It was clear now. I had to go to the one place every cultivator in Qingyun City feared, the Forbidden Zone. I didn't know it yet, but while I was unconscious, the business storm I started had already pushed the Li family to the brink of bankruptcy. Li Hao was grounded at home, stewing in rage, waiting for our duel in 1 month to kill me with his own hands. But an even bigger crisis was quietly brewing in the shadows. I was currently staying in the Listening Snow Pavilion, the finest courtyard in the Yi estate. The family's attitude toward me had done a complete 180-degree turn. The servants who used to look at me with disdain now bowed their heads in awe, calling me young master, with genuine fear in their eyes. Rare healing pills flowed into my room like a river. I had bought this respect with half my life. Late at night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, inspecting my internal state. The rejuvenation pill from Yi Tianxiong was powerful. Combined with the other herbs the family sent, the dragon soul was rapidly stitching my mangled meridians back together. The wound on my back had scabbed over, and my internal organs were stabilizing. But my frown only deepened. I could feel my meridians clearly. They were like a riverbed that had been slammed by a massive flood. The banks were covered in cracks. Every time the dragon soul's power circulated, even just to heal me, those cracks widened. This wasn't cultivation, it was self-destruction. At this rate, I wouldn't even make it to the duel. The next time I tried to use my full power, I would simply explode and die. "Spirit soul grass," I whispered. From the fractured memories of the dragon soul, I knew this was the only cure. I needed that herb to soothe my meridians and stabilize the violent energy of the soul. The only place it grew was the most terrifying region outside the city, the Monster Mountain Range. The hesitation in my eyes vanished, replaced by cold determination. I had to go. The next morning, when I told Qingxue my plan, her face went pale. No, absolutely not. She grabbed my hand tight, as if I'd disappear if she let go. The Monster Mountain Range is a death trap. Even high-level cultivators barely make it out alive. Your injuries aren't even healed yet. Qingxue, listen to me. I squeezed her cold hand and looked her in the eye. The problem inside me is a ticking time bomb. If I don't find that grass, I'm a dead man anyway. I don't want you to live in fear, and I refuse to lose to Li Hao. When I mentioned Li Hao, her body trembled. She saw the look in my eyes and knew she couldn't stop me. She turned to a cabinet and pulled out a neatly folded piece of silver armor. This is the ice cicada armor my mother left me, she said, her eyes red. It's nearly indestructible. You must wear it. She strapped the armor onto me with gentle hands, treating it like a precious treasure. Then, she pressed a small silk pouch into my palm. This is beast-repelling powder. It won't stop the strong ones, but it'll keep the low-level monsters away. She packed my bags, checking my water and food over and over, nagging like a wife sending her husband off on a long journey. I didn't say a word. I just watched her, etching her face into my memory. Wait for me to come back, I said softly. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I knew Qingxue was standing in the doorway, watching my back until I vanished into the morning light. The Monster Mountain Range sat 100 miles north of the city. At the entrance, a small market had formed where mercenaries and adventurers gathered. I didn't stop. I bought a basic map and dove straight into the dark, primal forest. The air inside was cold and damp, smelling of rotting leaves. Giant trees blocked out the sun. It was eerily quiet, broken only by the distant, bone-chilling roars of beasts. The spiritual energy here was incredibly thick, but so was the killing intent. I pushed a bit of the dragon soul's power into my eyes. Suddenly, the world turned into a hazy red mist, the bloodlust of countless years of slaughter. In some spots, the mist was deep crimson, signaling a danger that made my heart skip a beat. I made sure to steer clear of those areas. I followed the map, searching for damp, deathly quiet places where the spirit soul grass might grow. For 2 days, I pushed deeper into the outskirts. Qingxue's powder worked wonders, saving me from a lot of petty trouble. In a sunless canyon, I finally found a clue. The air here was freezing. On a cliffside, I spotted wind vines. Where these vines grew, spirit soul grass was usually nearby. I started to climb, but then something on the ground caught my eye. They weren't tracks from a beast. They were hoofprints, neat, organized, and fresh. A large group of riders had passed through here recently. Bandits? Black Wind Stronghold. The words I'd overheard in the Li family warehouse flashed in my mind. I knelt down. There were campfire ashes and discarded trash. It seemed the bandits the Li family was working with were hiding right here in the mountains. I noted the location, but my priority was still the herb. As I stood up to continue my climb, a massive jolt of danger spiked down my spine. A deafening roar ripped through the air. A foul, stinking wind slammed into me from behind. I didn't think. I just threw myself into a roll. Boom. The ground where I had been standing shattered. A massive boar, the size of a small hill, had slammed into the rock. It was covered in black, needle-like fur with 2-foot-long tusks that gleamed like cold steel. Its red eyes locked onto me, steam huffing from its snout. An iron-skin boar. Level 3 Chi refining stage. My heart sank. This was the first real fight I'd faced since awakening the dragon soul, and it was a monster that could crush a man into paste. This was my first real fight to the death. I couldn't afford a single mistake. I immediately channeled the power of the dragon soul, feeling a searing current of heat surge through my meridians. That familiar, stabbing pain returned, but I ignored it. I had to. The iron-skin boar pawed at the dirt with all 4 hooves. With a guttural roar, it charged again. Come on then, I hissed. I didn't retreat. I lunged forward. I knew that against a power-type beast like this, dodging was a losing game. It would just wear me down. I needed to find its weakness and end this in one strike. With the dragon's soul enhancing my vision, the boar's movements slowed down. I could see the vibrant flow of blood and chi throughout its massive body. Except for one spot. Just below its neck, the flow was sluggish and congested. That was its gait. Its only weak point. The massive head was inches from my chest. I threw myself into a hard slide to the left, the razor-sharp tusks grazing my clothes. At that exact moment, I thrust my Vajra longsword, the one I'd taken from the Yi family armory, with every ounce of strength I could muster. The blade turned into a streak of cold light, aiming straight for that patch under its neck. The sound of metal hitting metal echoed through the canyon. My hand went numb from the vibration. It felt like I'd stabbed a solid steel plate. The blade had barely penetrated half an inch. So tough, I gasped. The pain only made the boar more feral. It whipped its head around, the sheer force throwing me through the air like a rag doll. I slammed into a stone wall. A mouthful of blood sprayed from my lips. If I hadn't been wearing the ice silk soft armor, that impact would have shattered my ribs. I didn't even have time to catch my breath before the beast turned and charged again. I gritted my teeth, a streak of madness flashing in my eyes. I scrambled up and ran straight at it. Just as we were about to collide, I kicked off the ground and leaped high into the air, landing squarely on the boar's broad back. The beast went wild, bucking and slamming against the rocks to throw me off. I grabbed its coarse mane, locking my legs around its torso like iron pincers. I dropped my sword. It was useless against that hide. Instead, I gathered all the dragon's soul power into my right fist. A faint golden glow shimmered over my knuckles. Die! I screamed. I rained punches down on the back of its skull. Asterisk bang, 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 asterisk. Each strike hit like a heavy sledgehammer. The boar shrieked in agony, its movements becoming sluggish. Finally, after the 13th punch, the beast gave one last mournful cry. Its massive body collapsed, hitting the dirt with a heavy thud. It was dead. I slid off its back, exhausted. I sat there in the dirt, gasping for air, covered in blood. I couldn't tell if it was mine or the beast's. The pain in my meridians made my face turn deathly pale, but a spark of excitement flickered in my chest. I had won. I struggled to my feet and used my sword to cut open the boar's head. I pulled out a fist-sized beast core glowing with an earthy yellow light. This would fetch a great price at the market. But before I could even celebrate, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. A sense of extreme danger washed over me. I spun around. Standing silently in the shadows of the trees was a slender, gray-black wolf. It blended perfectly with the darkness. Its eyes were a haunting, ghostly green, staring at me without a shred of emotion. A shadow wolf. Level 5 Chi refining stage. The scent of the boar's blood had attracted a much deadlier predator. My heart sank. The air seemed to freeze. I had just finished a life-and-death struggle, and now I was facing a nightmare. If the iron-skinned boar was a heavy tank, this shadow wolf was a high-level assassin. I could feel its aura. It was on a completely different level than the boar. I was drained. My spirit power was gone, and my body was screaming in pain. Against a level 5 beast, I was a dead man walking. I looked at the open canyon behind me and let out a self-deprecating laugh. Running from a shadow wolf, a creature known for its speed, was suicide. The only option left was to fight. I forced myself to stand upright, gripping my notched longsword. I funneled the very last drop of dragon's soul power into my eyes, watching its every move. We stood there in the blood-red twilight, locked in a silent standoff. Then, without a growl or warning, the wolf moved. It turned into a streak of gray lightning, lunging at me. It was too fast. Even with my enhanced vision, my body couldn't keep up. I threw myself into a desperate roll. Too slow. Sharp claws raked across my shoulder, leaving 3 deep gashes that exposed the bone. I groaned, but I didn't stop moving. The wolf used a tree trunk to pivot, coming at me again from a lethal angle. Clang. I raised my sword to block. Sparks flew as claws met steel. The force sent me stumbling back until I hit the stone wall. This wasn't a fight, it was a slaughter. The shadow wolf seemed to be enjoying it. It didn't kill me instantly. It circled me, darting in to leave a new wound before retreating. Slash. Another hit. I couldn't hold on anymore. I dropped to one knee, coughing up thick clumps of blood. My clothes were soaked. My vision started to blur as my life force drained away. Asterisk, is this it? Am I dying? Asterisk. I thought of Qingxua. I remembered her red, teary eyes as she put the armor on me. I remembered the promise I made her. Wait for me to come back. No, I whispered. I can't die here. A primal will to live ignited in my heart like wildfire. I looked up at the wolf as it approached with elegant, slow steps. My gaze turned crazed. If I was going down, I was taking this thing with me. The shadow wolf sensed the change in my energy. It paused, tilting its head with a flicker of human-like confusion in its green eyes. In that split second, I moved. I didn't retreat. I used every last bit of my strength to charge straight at it. It was a suicidal move, and the wolf knew it. Its confusion turned into cold cruelty. It opened its maw, revealing rows of bone-white fangs. The shadow wolf lunged at me, ready to enjoy its final feast. It didn't realize that I wasn't charging at it. I was aiming for the space behind it. I was aiming for the bottomless cliff. At the exact moment we were about to collide, I did something the beast's primitive mind couldn't understand. I twisted my body midair. I abandoned all defense. I let its razor-sharp claws sink directly into my chest. Rip! Agony exploded through me. Even though the ice silk soft armor absorbed most of the force, the impact made my internal organs churn. But I smiled. I used my own flesh and blood to buy a single second of contact. "You beast!" I roared. "Go to hell with me." I locked my arms around the shadow wolf's body like iron shackles. I didn't look back. I threw my entire weight forward, dragging both of us over the edge of the cliff. The wolf finally realized what was happening. It thrashed wildly, letting out a terrified howl, but it was too late. Momentum took us. Man and wolf became a single dark blur as we vanished into the abyss. The wind screamed in my ears. The void pulled at my back. I squeezed my eyes shut, and the last thing I saw in my mind was Yi Qingshue's face, wet with tears. "Qingxue, I'm sorry. I'm not coming back." Boom. A split second before my consciousness faded into black, I heard a massive explosion of sound. Then, a bone-chilling torrent of water swallowed me whole. I don't know how much time passed. Asterisk cough. Hack. Asterisk. I snapped my eyes open, coughing violently and spitting out mouthfuls of freezing water. I was alive. I struggled to sit up, trembling as I looked around. I was in a massive underground cavern. I had washed up on the edge of a deep, dark pool. High above, I could see a tiny speck of light. That was the cliff I had fallen from. The deep water had saved my life. As for the shadow wolf, it was likely smashed to a pulp against the jagged rocks during the fall. I survived. I checked my injuries and let out a bitter laugh. My body felt like a pile of shattered glass. The claw marks on my chest weren't deep, but they burned like fire. My meridians were completely drained and battered. I dragged myself onto the dry bank, looking for a place to heal. That's when a faint shimmer on the stone wall caught my eye. It was a small plant, crystal clear and translucent, looking as if it had been carved from pure ice. It was rooted in a narrow crack, glowing with a soft, peaceful white light. The air around it felt warm and moist. A pure, cooling energy radiated from the leaves. I took one breath of the scent and felt my spirit clear. Even the stinging pain in my meridians began to fade. My heart hammered against my ribs. My eyes widened with pure, unbelievable joy. The soul grass. This was the very thing I had risked my life for in the Monster Mountain range. Just when I thought I had reached a dead end, the path to my survival had opened right in front of me.